Now, over the last 4 to 5 years, I mean, like we've seen a vast shift in Miss Bikinis and who is one and the degree of muscularity and the conditioning. So for anyone who's not as familiar, when Tyler's talking about the barrier to entry, and I'm not speaking on his behalf or anything like that, I'm just giving you my interpretation of this. Barrier to entry is determined by conditioning, meaning the level of leanness that you have to achieve, so the body fat you have to get down to, and then the level of muscularity, so the muscular development, the muscle tissue, and the amount and where it's placed that you need to have to be competitive within the division. Now, I've been saying this for a while, probably since I got back into the sport in 2020. When I turned pro in 2021, I did very well against Ashley Kay, actually, which is sick because she's one of my idols. I'm a very big fan of hers. She's very, very successful within our sport. And what I noticed at that point with my physique is like, even being in the sport for as long as I have, I was very small. And even though I was really conditioned, what became apparent to me is like there was a very big muscularity discrepancy in what I had, at least from the lower body, compared to other athletes. And this really became obvious at the pro level. I mean, at the amateur level and even at the national level, I did see size discrepancies, but this is now something that, being a few years past this, working with different athletes, this is a very real conversation that I have to have with them. That's like, okay, you want to get into the sport of competing. And like, I almost approach these conversations now with apprehension, prior to this video coming out, is because I know that like, if someone wants to get into the sport, even at like the lowest level at the time was bikini, that still requires a ridiculous amount of muscle. And frankly, I'm not going to say that it requires drugs, but what I will say is that there's a lot of drug use, like even at the amateur, regional, national level. And that's something that I don't think is absolutely necessary, but I think is used very much as a compensation because you have a lot of coaches getting into the space. They're trying to build up their accolades and their rosters. So they take girls that are frankly already pretty fit, give them a little bit of something to expedite that maybe 1 to 2 year physique that would land them a top placing at the regional level or the national level. And now you've expedited this process and you've turned what should have been a very like entry level physique, and you've turned it to something that is, for lack of a better term, is very chemically enhanced. And I guess expedited probably is the best way to say it. Is it attainable without drugs? Sure. But it's going to take a long time. And then when you look at the pro level, again, this is just my perception. And like, I've looked at the comments of some of the videos from other coaches, and there are bikini pros that are like very insistent. Like I did this naturally. I don't know why, like they're saying bikini is out of hand. It's all the drug use from the other people. And it's like, yeah, like there are natural bikini pros. Sure. Frankly, I think a lot of people's definition of natural is becoming very convenient. So what I see across the sport is that you have a lot of bikini pros who are on HRT who aren't disclosing that, or are on fat burners and non-androgenic PEDs, and they do in their mind consider it natural. And that's not to say that like they have to disclose it, but I do think it's misleading when we have these very elite physiques at the top level. Again, like not to say anyone has to disclose everything that they're doing. That is their prerogative to not share. But I think what it stirs is then the question and the curiosity. And then at the amateur level, you have these physiques that maybe structurally aren't very favorable, and they then have to compensate, and they want to do so in a rapid way because bikini very much is like the earliest entry into bodybuilding. So you have the motivation from the coaches who see that as like the lowest tier fruit is a bikini competitor and turning them pro. And then you have the motivation from the athlete because they see these girls and they're like, well, she did it relatively quick. And you hear a lot of dialogue and discussion around, oh, like everyone in bikini is natural, even though that's not exactly true. Like I think that's far from true. Yet we don't nearly have the acceptance or really like the respect around the drug use in bikini quite yet for that to be something that is openly discussed. I mean, like literally in the past 2 years, it's taken off a ton and it's become more acceptable for people to admit drug use, even the non-androgenics. But I would say that is a fairly recent shift we've seen culturally.